The wrathful sovereign limped in the Sol system like a dying animal seeking its den. Admiral Kestrel Voss watched the tactical display with growing unease. As the frigate's approach vector painted itself across her command screen, the ship had been missing for 18 months, presumed destroyed, along with the other 11 vessels in Task Force Crimson. During humanity's first deep space reconnaissance mission beyond the Helix, Nebula. Now it was back, alone. Signals degraded. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Commander Vex Harrow, his fingers dancing across the communications array, hull integrity at 37%. Life support systems failing. We're reading 17 souls aboard out of an original crew complement of 230. Voss felt ice crystallize in her veins. The wrathful sovereign had been Captain Mel Torvin's ship, one of humanity's finest tactical minds and her former mentor. If Torvin was alive, why hadn't he transmitted the standard approach codes? Why was his ship bleeding atmosphere and running on emergency power? Admiral, Harrow's voice cracked with barely contained excitement. We're receiving a priority burst transmission. It's encrypted with Omega-7 protocols. Omega-7, the highest classification reserved for intelligence that could alter the course of human civilization. Voss's scarred hand souvenirs from the Proxima Station Massacre Titan on her command chair's armrests, patch it through to my private channel. Full security lockdown on this bridge. The transmission crackled to life, and Captain Torvin's voice emerged from 18 months of silence. He sounded ancient, hollowed out by whatever horrors had carved away his crew. Kestrel, if you're receiving this, then we made it home. The Velter, they're not just raiders. They're scouts, an entire civilization built on conquest. And they've been probing our defenses for decades. But we found them. We found their homeworld. Voss's blood turned to liquid helium. The Velter had been humanity's nightmare for 3 years, chitinous predators who struck without warning, leaving behind only scorched worlds and scattered bones. Their technology was superior, their tactics ruthless, and their purpose seemingly incomprehensible. Until now, we followed their supply lines through 17 star systems. Torvin continued, lost good people at every jump. The Defiant Mercy went down at Kepler 442. The Iron Testament bought us time at Wolf 359C with a suicide run that saved the mission. By the time we reached the staging ground at Arcturus Prime, I had 4 ships left. The transmission dissolved into static before resuming. They have a weakness, Kestrel. Their homeworld Veltharian sits at the center of a binary pulsar system. The radiation makes long-range sensors useless, but it also means they can't detect incoming threats until ships are practically on top of them. We have the navigational data, the defense grid layouts, everything. Voss leaned forward. In the 3 years since first contact, humanity had been fighting a desperate defensive war, always one step behind the Velter's lightning raids. Now they had a chance to take the fight to the enemy's heart. The coordinates are in our navigation. Computer, Torvin's voice grew fainter, more strained. But Kestrel, what we saw there, what they're building, if we don't strike now, if we don't commit everything we have, there won't be a human race left to save. They're not just conquering worlds, they're preparing for something bigger, something that will make their previous raids look like mercy. The transmission ended with a burst of static. Voss stared at the incoming frigate, her mind racing through the implications. Humanity had been playing defense for 3 years, losing colonies, losing ships, losing hope. The Velter seemed infinite, unstoppable, appearing from the void to destroy everything humans had built beyond Earth. Now they had a target, a homeworld, a chance to end this war before it ended them. But first, she needed to know what horrors had reduced the wrathful sovereign's crew from 230 to 17 survivors. And she needed to understand what Torvin meant by something bigger. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin in earnest. The medical bay of the Meridian's edge resembled a morgue, more than a treatment facility. Captain Mel Torvin lay unconscious on the primary surgical table, his body a road map of barely healed wounds. The surviving crew members from the wrathful sovereign occupied the remaining beds, their eyes hollow with the 1,000-yard stare of soldiers who had witnessed the impossible. Admiral Voss studied the mission reports while Chief Medical Officer Dr. Lyrics Cavendish worked to stabilize the survivors. The data painted a picture of systematic horror that made her stomach clench. Admiral, Dr. Cavendish's voice cut through her concentration. Captain Torvin is conscious. He's asking for you. Voss found Torvin propped against his pillows, looking like a ghost wearing familiar features. His left arm ended at the elbow, a clean amputation that spoke of battlefield surgery. Burns covered half his face, and his remaining eye blazed with the intensity of a man who had stared into hell and returned with warnings. Kestrel. His voice was barely a whisper. Did you get the coordinates? We did. Male. What happened out there? Where are the other ships? Torvin closed his eye, and for a moment, Voss thought he had lost consciousness again. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of accumulated nightmares. We found that staging ground at Arcturus Prime. Thought it was just a forward base maybe. A few hundred Velter preparing for another raid. We were wrong. It was a harvesting operation. He struggled to sit up straighter, his face contorted with pain and determination. They weren't just killing colonists, Kestrel. They were taking them, converting them. The Velter aren't a naturally reproducing species, they're a plague. They transform other sentient beings into themselves through some kind of biological reconstitution process. Voss felt the deck seem to shift beneath her feet. You're saying they were human? Some of them, the ones we fought at Arcturus Prime. I recognize voices, faces. Commander Yasha Kane from the Titan Colony Massacre. She was leading a Velter assault squadron, but underneath the chitinous growths and the cybernetic implants, it was still her, still human. The implications hit Voss like a plasma bolt to the chest. Every colonist presumed dead. Every missing ship's crew, they hadn't been killed. They had been absorbed, transformed into weapons against their own species. We tried to extract intelligence, Torvin continued. Captured a conversion facility on Arcturus Prime's third moon. The process, it's not instant. Takes about 48 hours to completely transform a human into one of them. During that time, they retain their memories, their tactical knowledge, their understanding of human psychology and strategy. Dear God, Voss whispered. It gets worse. The facility contained over 30,000 conversion pods. 30,000 humans in various stages of transformation. My tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Vel Ashworth, suggested we could rescue some of them the once. In early stages might be reversible. Torvin's remaining eye focused on something beyond the medical bay's walls. Something that existed only in his memory. We tried, saved maybe 200 before the main Velter force arrived. The Defiant Mercy and Iron Testament held the line while we evacuated survivors. But the rescued humans, they weren't grateful. They were terrified. Terrified of what? Of what they had seen during the early stages of conversion. The Velter don't just transform bodies, they integrate minds. During the process, subjects gain access to the collective Velter consciousness. They see the scope of the invasion, the timeline, the ultimate goal. Voss gripped the medical bed's rail, which is complete galactic sterilization. The Velter aren't just conquering humanity with a last holdout. They've already absorbed 4 to 7 other species across this galaxy. Earth is designated as the final harvesting ground before they move to the next galaxy. The medical bay fell silent except for the steady beeping of life support monitors. Voss processed the information, her tactical mind automatically calculating odds and possibilities. Humanity wasn't facing an invasion, they were facing extinction through absorption. The coordinates you brought back, she said finally. There. Homeworld. What's the tactical situation? Veltharian sits at the center of a binary pulsar system surrounded by 7 artificially enhanced moons. Each moon contains a conversion facility capable of processing 1 million subjects simultaneously. The planet itself houses the core consciousness, a massive organic computer that coordinates all Velter operations across the galaxy. Torvin struggled to reach the data pad beside his bed. The survivors we rescued, they gave us detailed intelligence before. He paused, his voice breaking. Before we had to make the hard choice. What choice? The partial conversion process is irreversible, Kestrel, even in early stages. The Velter consciousness begins to integrate with human thought patterns. Within 72 hours, rescued subjects start exhibiting Velter behavioral patterns. They become sleeper agents. Voss felt her throat constrict. You killed them. I ordered the termination of 200 partially converted humans to prevent them from compromising our mission. Good people, brave people. Men and women who deserve better than becoming weapons against their own species. The weight of command settled on Voss's shoulders like a lead blanket. In the coming battle, there would be no easy choices, no clean victories. They would be fighting their own transformed people, as well as the original Velter forces. How long do we have? She asked. According to the intelligence we gathered, the Velter are preparing for a final assault on Sol System. Mass conversion fleets are already moving toward human space. We have maybe 6 weeks before Earth becomes just another harvesting ground. 6 weeks to organize humanity's last stand. 6 weeks to strike at the heart of an empire that had consumed 47 civilizations. 6 weeks to prove that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. The emergency session of the Solar Defense Council convened in the underground bunkers beneath Luna City. 300 meters of reinforced titanium in desperation separating Earth's leadership from the void that had become humanity's hunting ground. Admiral Voss stood before the assembled delegates, the weight of impossible decisions pressing down on her shoulders like a collapsing star. "Gentlemen, ladies," she began, her voice cutting through the chamber's tension. "We have 6 weeks to organize the complete mobilization of human civilization, not for defense, for extinction-level warfare." Chancellor Brick's torment of the outer colonies leaned forward, his weathered face etched with skepticism. "Admiral, with respect, we've been fighting the Velter for 3 years. Our losses have been catastrophic. What makes you think a single offensive operation can succeed where our entire defensive strategy has failed?" Voss activated the holographic display, and the chamber filled with tactical projections of the Veltharian system. "Because we've been fighting the symptoms, not the disease. Every Velter raid, every attack on our colonies, they've been coordinated from this single point. Destroy the core consciousness, and their entire operational structure collapses." Director Kai Volkov of Mars Industrial Complex studied the projections with calculating eyes. "The resource requirements would be staggering. You're talking about stripping every defensive position, pulling ships from colony protection duties, risking everything on a single decisive battle. That's exactly what I'm talking about." Voss replied, "Because in 6 weeks, there won't be any colonies left to protect." She gestured, and the display shifted to show intelligence gathered from the partially converted humans. Before their termination, the chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed the scope of the Velter-S final offensive plan. 3,000 conversion ships, Voss continued, each capable of processing 10,000 humans every 48 hours. "They're not planning to conquer us, they're planning to harvest us. Every man, woman, and child in human space will be transformed into Velter soldiers for their expansion into the next galaxy." Tormund's face had gone pale. "My God, the proximate children, the civilians we've been evacuating, are being herded into processing zones. Every refugee ship we've lost, every evacuation convoy that went missing, they've been captured, not destroyed. The Velter have been building their invasion force using our own people." The implications rippled through the chamber. Families torn apart, loved ones presumed dead, but actually transformed into enemy combatants. The psychological warfare potential was staggering. General Thane Killjoy of the Terran Space Marines stood abruptly. "Admiral, what's the proposed force composition for this offensive?" Voss had been dreading this question. "Everything, every ship, every soldier, every weapon humanity can field. We strip Earth's defenses, abandon the outer colonies, and commit our entire civilization to a single battle. That's suicide," Volkov protested. If we fail, we're extinct anyway," Voss snapped. "But if we succeed, if we can destroy their core consciousness and the conversion facilities on those 7 moons, we might be able to free the transformed humans, restore them to their original state." The chamber erupted in debate. Voices rose in argument, fear, and desperate hope. Through the chaos, Captain Torvin's words echoed in Voss's mind. "We have maybe 6 weeks before Earth becomes just another harvesting ground." "There's something else," Voss announced, her voice cutting through the arguments. "The intelligence we gathered indicates that the Velter core consciousness isn't native to their homeworld. It's artificial, a construct designed to coordinate and control their expansion. If we can access it, we might be able to reverse the transformation process for every human they've ever converted." The chamber fell silent again. The possibility of rescuing not just recent captives, but everyone taken over the past 3 years, including the crews of the missing task force ships, was almost too overwhelming to contemplate. "How do we know this intelligence is accurate?" asked Director Sarah Nightwind of the Jupiter Mining Consortium. "You're asking us to bet our species on information extracted from partially converted humans." "Because," Torvin's voice came from the chamber's entrance, where he stood supported by medical braces and burning with determination. "I've seen their memories. During the conversion process, subjects don't just lose their humanity, they gain access to the entire Velter operational database. I know their fleet compositions, their tactical doctrines, their weapons capabilities, and I know their weakness. He moved slowly to the display controls, his remaining hand working with practiced efficiency. The hologram shifted to show the binary pulsar system surrounding Veltharion. The pulsar radiation that protects them from long-range detection also interferes with their own communications. Once we're inside the system, their coordination breaks down. They can't effectively deploy their numerical superiority because they can't coordinate multiple fleet elements, but they still outnumber us. Killjoy pointed out. Intelligence estimates suggest they have over 5,000 ships defending the homeworld. They do, Torvin agreed, but most of those ships are crewed by converted humans, who still retain fragments of their original personalities. They're not loyal soldiers, they're enslaved minds fighting against their own will. If we can disrupt the control signals from the core consciousness, even temporarily, their entire fleet will turn against itself. Voss felt the tide of opinion shifting in the chamber. Desperate hope was replacing paralyzing fear. The mission parameters are simple, she announced. We take every ship humanity can field estimates suggest. We can assemble roughly 800 vessels and we strike directly at Veltharion. No subtlety, no complex maneuvers. We punch through their defensive grid, destroy the conversion facilities, and eliminate the core consciousness. And if we're wrong, Tormund asked quietly, if the intelligence is flawed, if this is some kind of trap. Voss met his gaze with unwavering determination. Then we die fighting instead of dying as slaves. But we don't go extinct quietly. We make them remember that humanity fought back. The vote was unanimous. Operation Extinction's end would commence. In 42 days, the assembled fleet stretched across the Kuiper Belt like a metallic constellation of humanities. Final hope. 837 ships of every class and designation from massive dreadnoughts to converted mining vessels bristling with improvised weapons had answered the call. Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable Truth, watching as the largest military force in human history prepared for what would either be their species' salvation or its final battle. Fleet composition report, she ordered, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Commander Jax Ravencrest, her tactical officer, consulted his displays. 112 capital ships, 347 cruisers and destroyers, 218 frigates, and 160 support vessels. Total crew complement, 487,000 personnel. Nearly 500,000 souls betting everything on intelligence gathered from dying, partially converted humans. Voss pushed the doubt aside. That was a luxury they couldn't afford. Signal from the advanced scout group reported communications. Officer Vera Steelheart. They've reached the outer perimeter of the Veltharion system. Sensor data confirms Captain Torvin's intelligence. The pulsar radiation is scrambling their long-range detection grid. Perfect. The element of surprise was crucial to their plan. Once the Velter realized the full scope of humanity's assault, their numerical superiority would make victory impossible. All ships, this is Admiral Voss, she announced on the fleet-wide channel. In 30 minutes, we began our final jump to the Veltharion system. For 3 years, we fought defensively while they picked apart our colonies piece by piece. Today, we take the fight to their doorstep. She paused, looking out at the assembled fleet. Ships from every human world, crewed by volunteers who had left behind families and loved ones for this desperate gamble. Some of you will not return from this battle. Some of you will face friends and family members who have been converted and turned against us. This is the hardest burden soldiers can bear, fighting those we love to save those we can. The fleet maintained formation silence, but Voss could feel the weight of her words settling over hundreds of thousands of hearts. But remember this, every shot we fire, every sacrifice we make, every life we lose or take serves a single purpose, ensuring that humanity's story doesn't end as a footnote in someone else's empire. We go not as conquerors, but as liberators. We go to bring our people home. The jump to hyperspace felt different this time. Usually, the transition was smooth, almost gentle. Now, with 800 ships jumping simultaneously, space itself seemed to scream as they tore through reality toward humanity's final battlefield. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Veltharion system, and Voss's tactical displays immediately exploded with contact markers. The intelligence had been accurate, but incomplete. The Velter had more than 5,000 ships. They had nearly 8,000. All ships, battle formation Delta 7, Voss commanded. Capital ships to the center, screening elements to the flanks. Remember, our primary objectives are the 7 moons and the planetary core consciousness. Everything else is secondary. The Velta response was immediate and overwhelming. Their ships moved with the coordinated precision of a hive mind, flowing toward the human fleet like a living tide of chitin in metal. But as they closed the distance, Voss began to notice something that made her blood run cold. Admiral Ravencrest's voice was strained. Sensor analysis of the incoming ships. They're reading human biosignatures. Voss felt her heart stop. How many? Approximately 60% of their fleet is crewed by converted humans. We're not just fighting Velta, we're fighting our own people. The implications hit the fleet like a physical blow on the comm channels. She could hear voices, officers recognizing ship configurations, calling out names of vessels they knew had been lost to Velta raids. The Starlight Crusader, missing since the Titan Colony massacre. The Resolute Dawn, lost defending the mining stations at Kepler 442. All ships, Voss broadcast, her voice cutting through the chaos of recognition and grief. Maintain targeting discipline. The people on those ships are prisoners, not enemies. But they're armed prisoners who will kill us all if we hesitate. Fight smart, fight hard, and fight for their freedom. The first exchange of fire lit up the void like a miniature star going nova. Human ships, the real ones, unleashed everything they had at the approaching horde. Plasma cannons, kinetic penetrators, nuclear warheads, and exotic weapons cobbled together from mining equipment and industrial machinery. The Velta responded with their own terrible arsenal. Weapons that seemed to bend space itself to deliver destruction. The Meridian's Edge, one of humanity's newest dreadnoughts, took a direct hit from a Velta conversion beam, a weapon that didn't just destroy ships, but attempted to transform them into enemy vessels. Admiral Voss watched in horror as the massive warship's hull began to ripple and change, organic growth spreading across its surface like a plague. Meridian's Edge, respond. She called out. Captain Zero Ironclad's voice came back distorted, filled with pain and determination. Admiral, the conversion beam is restructuring our hull. My crew, some of them are already changing. I'm detecting Velta biosignatures throughout the ship. Voss closed her eyes. She knew what had to be done. Captain, can you reach the 7th moon, the largest conversion facility? Affirmative. But Admiral, if we get close enough to do damage, you'll be within their defensive grid. Understand? Captain. A pause, then Ironclad's voice, steady and resolved. It's been an honor serving with you, Admiral. Meridian's Edge, out. Voss watched as the infected dreadnought changed course, driving straight toward the 7th moon despite the combined fire of 50 Velta ships. The Meridian's Edge was dying, its crew fighting a losing battle against the conversion beam's effects. But it maintained course with the determination that defined humanity's warrior spirit. The ship struck the moon's surface at near relativistic speed, and the resulting explosion was visible from across the system. The 7th moon, its conversion facilities, and its cargo of imprisoned humans vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. 1 down, 6 to go. But the cost was already staggering, and the real battle hadn't even begun. The battle for Veltharion raged across 3 dimensions of space as human ships duffed through the planet's defensive grid, like wolves attacking a herd. Admiral Voss had split her fleet into 7 distinct assault groups, each targeting one of the conversion facility moons, while she led the primary force toward the planet itself and the core consciousness that coordinated the Velta Empire. Tactical report, she shouted over the cacophony of battle communications flooding the bridge. Moon 5 has fallen, Ravencrest announced, his voice grim. Captain Rourke Stormbreaker rammed the Defiant Thunder into the primary facility. Complete destruction. But we lost 63 ships to their defensive grid. Voss nodded grimly. Each moon represented a strategic victory, but the cost in human lives was astronomical. They had started with 837 ships. After 90 minutes of combat, they were down to 512. Admiral, communications. Officer Steelheart's voice cracked with urgency. Priority transmission from Assault Group 3. Captain Lyra Dawnfire reports they've identified converted humans being held in stasis on Moon 3. Thousands of them. She's requesting permission to attempt a rescue operation. Voss felt the weight of impossible choices. Every minute spent on rescue operations meant more ships lost to the Velta defensive grid. But those prisoners, they could be anyone. Family members, friends from the outer colonies, children taken during the early raids. Negative, she replied, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Primary mission takes precedence. If we fail to destroy the core consciousness, everyone dies anyway. The tactical display showed the brutal mathematics of their assault. The Velter had superior numbers, superior technology, and the psychological advantage of using converted humans as weapons. But humanity had something the Velter couldn't understand: the willingness to make sacrifices for abstract concepts like freedom and dignity. Admiral, Captain Torvin's voice came over the comm from his position aboard the assault frigate Righteous Vengeance. I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planetary surface. The core consciousness is preparing some kind of defensive measure. Specifications unknown, but the power output is off the charts. If I had to guess, they're preparing to broadcast a signal that will activate sleeper protocols in any human who's been exposed to Velter influence, even partially. Voss felt ice in her veins. If the Velter could turn even their own people against them, how many of our personnel have been exposed? Anyone who served in border regions, anyone who survived Velter raids, anyone who's been in close contact with their technology, possibly 30% of our force. The implications were staggering. In minutes, a third of their fleet could turn against them. The battle was about to become a three-way nightmare. All ships, priority Alpha alert. Voss broadcast, prepare for potential compromise of personnel with Velter exposure. Department heads, implement Omega protocols immediately. Omega protocols, the order to kill their own people if they showed signs of Velter influence. Another impossible choice in a war that seemed designed to destroy humanity's soul along with its body. The planetary defense grid opened fire with weapons that defied human understanding. Beams of twisted space-time tore through ship hulls like paper. Gravitational mines created localized black holes that consumed entire squadrons. The Valiant Crusader, a heavy cruiser, simply vanished as reality folded around it. But the human ships pressed on, their crews united by desperation and determination. Captain Silas Nighthawk of the Iron Retribution led his squadron in a suicide run against Moon One's defensive platforms, clearing a path for the assault ships. The converted battleship Fallen Hope, once humanity's pride, now a Velter weapon, intercepted them with devastating effect. Iron Retribution to all ships. Nighthawk's voice came through the static of battle. I'm reading human biosignatures aboard the Fallen Hope. They're trying to break free of Velter control. Some kind of internal battle. It was the break they needed. The partially converted humans aboard the enemy ship were fighting against their programming, creating chaos in the Velter command structure. Other converted ships began showing similar signs of internal conflict. All ships, concentrate fire on vessels showing command instability. Voss ordered, help our people break free. The tide began to turn. Ship after ship of converted humans broke free from Velter control, turning their weapons against their former masters. The Fallen Hope destroyed 3 Velter cruisers before its crew managed to send a signal. Admiral, this is Commander Yuki Starweaver. My crew is back under human control, but the conversion process, we're dying. The biological modifications are breaking down without Velter maintenance. How long do you have? Maybe 20 minutes before organ failure. We're going to make. Then count. Voss watched as the Fallen Hope led a squadron of recently liberated ships straight into the heart of the Velter formation. They fought with the fury of the damned, knowing they were dying, but determined to die as humans. Admiral, Ravencrest reported, we've lost contact with assault groups 2 and 6. But Moon 4 is confirmed destroyed, and Moon 6 is showing critical damage. 3 moons down. Massive casualties on both sides, and the core consciousness still intact. But they were closer than any human force had ever come to striking at the heart of the Velter Empire. Admiral, Steelheart announced, massive energy spike from the planetary surface. The core consciousness is activating through the tactical display. Voss could see a pulse of energy spreading out from Veltharian's surface, racing toward the human fleet at the speed of light. When it struck, every human who had ever been exposed to Velter influence would become a weapon against their own species. All ships, brace for. The pulse hit them like a psychic tsunami across the fleet. Crew members began screaming as dormant Velter programming activated. On the bridge of the Indomitable Truth, Commander Ravencrest suddenly turned his weapon on his own tactical station, his eyes glowing with alien intelligence. The real battle was just beginning. The bridge of the Indomitable Truth became a battlefield in microcosm as activated sleeper agents turned against their own crew. Admiral Voss put 3 plasma bolts into Commander Ravencrest's chest as he attempted to sabotage the navigation systems. Her face a mask of professional calm despite the horror of killing her trusted officer. All ships. Report sleeper activation. Percentages, she called out while stepping over Ravencrest's body. The responses painted a nightmare scenario. Across the fleet, 37% of personnel had been compromised by dormant Velter programming. Ships were tearing themselves apart from within. As crews fought desperate battles in corridors and command centers, Admiral, came the strained voice of Captain Varen Nightfall from the heavy cruiser Last Defiance. We've lost main engineering to compromised personnel. They're trying to overload our reactor and take out the ships around us. Can you regain control? Negative. Initiating emergency separation of command section. We'll continue the fight with auxiliary power, but our main guns are offline. Ship after ship reported similar situations. The Starfire Eternal lost half its crew to sleeper activation. Before the survivors managed to establish control, the Thunder's Echo went silent entirely, presumably lost to internal sabotage. But humanity's survivors adapted with a brutal efficiency that had carried them through 3 years of desperate warfare. Captain Mira Shadowblade of the frigate Relentless Hunter reported the first successful countermeasure. Admiral, we've isolated compromised personnel in secure compartments and continue operating with skeleton crews reduces our efficiency. But we're still combat effective. The battle had evolved into a 3-way nightmare. Original Velter forces pressed their attack against the human fleet, while converted humans broke free from Velter control and turned against their former masters. Even as activated sleeper agents sabotaged human ships from within. Admiral, Captain Torvin's voice cut through the chaos. I'm detecting massive energy buildup in the core consciousness facility. They're preparing to broadcast another pulse. This one will be strong enough to convert every human in the system instantly. Voss studied the tactical display. They had destroyed 4 of the 7 moons, but the remaining 3 plus the planetary facility represented an overwhelming force. Her fleet was down to 300 operational ships, many running on skeleton crews. Time to full charge 18 minutes. 18 minutes to save humanity. 18 minutes to justify the sacrifice of nearly 500,000 souls. 18 minutes to prove that free will could triumph over imposed unity. All ships. Final assault formation. Voss commanded. Every ship capable of independent operation. Converge on the planetary surface. We're going to ram the core consciousness facility. Admiral, protested Captain Dex Ironforge of the Dreadnought Eternal Vigil. If we commit everything to the surface assault, we'll be defenseless against the remaining moon facilities. Captain, in 18 minutes, there won't be a humanity left to defend. This is our last play. The human fleet reformed into a spear formation. Every remaining ship pointing toward Veltharian-S surface, where the core consciousness pulsed with malevolent energy. The Velter defensive grid responded with everything they had, filling space with weapons fire that bet reality itself. The Valorous Dawn disintegrated under focused gravitational manipulation. The Hope's Ember was consumed by some kind of molecular disintegration beam, but the survivors pressed on. Their crews united by the knowledge that this was humanity's final moment. Admiral, Steelheart reported, we're receiving a transmission from the planetary surface. It's human. Patch it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was distorted but unmistakably human. Human fleet. This is Dr. Elena Stormwind, formerly of the research vessel Cosmic Frontier. I've been partially converted but retained enough autonomy to access the core consciousness systems. The facility has a weakness, a single point of failure in the primary processing matrix. Coordinates transmitting now. Voss felt hope flare in her chest. Dr. Stormwind had been one of humanity's leading xenobiologists, lost during the Proxima Station massacre 2 years ago. Doctor, what's your status? Dying. Admiral, the conversion process is rejecting my attempts to resist. But I've learned something crucial. The core consciousness isn't just coordinating the Velter Empire. It's maintaining the conversion process for every transformed human. If it's destroyed, the biological modifications will begin to fail. How long would that take? Hours, maybe days. But Admiral, the failure won't be survivable for those who have been fully converted. Destroying the core consciousness will kill every human the Velter have ever transformed. Voss felt the weight of genocide settling on her shoulders. To save humanity's future, she would have to condemn hundreds of thousands of converted humans to death. Doctor, how many? Best estimate, Nearly 2 million humans across 4 to 7 star systems. Every person the Velter have taken over the past 3 years, plus the populations of species they absorbed before encountering humanity. 2 million lives, the entire population of Mars, every colonist from the outer worlds. Children who had been playing in schoolyards when the Velter came, scientists, farmers, soldiers, teachers all transformed into weapons and now facing death as the price of humanity's freedom. Admiral, Dr. Stormwind's voice was growing weaker. The choice isn't whether they live or die. They're already dead. We're just walking corpses animated by alien technology. The choice is whether their deaths serve a purpose. Voss looked around her bridge at the surviving crew members, then at the tactical display showing the approaching moment of humanity's extinction. Every second of hesitation brought the final conversion pulse closer to completion. All ships, she announced, her voice carrying across the fleet. We have our target. Single point strike on the core consciousness. Matrix, every ship, every weapon, concentrated fire on the transmitted coordinates. Admiral, Captain Torvin's voice carried a note of finality. I'm taking the righteous vengeance on a direct approach. My ship has the best chance of penetrating their inner defensive grid. Mel, no. We need you to what? Survive this. Kestrel, I've been carrying the weight of those 17 survivors for months. Let me carry the weight of 2 million more. Let me finish what we started. Voss watched as the scarred frigate broke formation, diving straight toward the planetary surface through a gauntlet of weapons fire that turned space itself into a maelstrom of destruction. The righteous vengeance was humanity's conscience made, manifest damaged, barely functional, but absolutely determined to reach its target. All ships, support Captain Torvin's approach. Voss commanded. Everything we have. Concentrated on clearing his path, the human fleet opened fire with weapons that represented the pinnacle of their technological achievement. Plasma cannons designed to cut through asteroid belts, kinetic penetrators that could shatter moons, nuclear warheads that burned with the fury of caged stars, and behind it all, the desperate fury of a species that refused to go quietly into extinction. The Velter defensive grid responded with equal violence. The stellar hammer exploded as gravitational forces tore it apart. The Phoenix Rising was caught in a temporal distortion field that aged its crew to dust in seconds. But their sacrifice cleared the way for the righteous vengeance to continue its desperate plunge. Admiral, Dr. Stormwind's voice came through the chaos. The conversion pulse is at 80% charge. You have maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes to end a war that had consumed civilizations. 5 minutes to prove that free will could triumph over forced unity. 5 minutes to justify the sacrifice of everyone who had died fighting for humanity's right to exist. The righteous vengeance broke through the final defensive layer, its hull glowing cherry red from weapons impacts. Captain Torvin's voice came through the calm one last time. For humanity, for everyone we couldn't save, for everyone we still can. The frigate struck the core consciousness facility at maximum velocity, its fusion reactor detonating in a chain reaction that lit up the planet's surface like a newborn star. For a moment, the facility's energy output spiked to impossible levels. Then everything went silent. The conversion pulse died. The Velter ship stopped moving in perfect coordination, and across the galaxy, 2 million converted humans began the process of dying free. The silence that followed the destruction of the core consciousness was more profound than any sound Admiral Voss had ever experienced. Across the Veltharian system, thousands of ships, both Velter and converted human, drifted without purpose, their controlling intelligence eliminated in a single catastrophic moment. Fleet status report, Voss requested, her voice hoarse. From hours of battle commands, 237 ships responding, reported the new communications officer, Lieutenant Kira Brightblade, who had assumed duties after Steelheart's death. During the sleeper activation crisis, approximately 140,000 survivors, from 800 ships and nearly 500,000 personnel to 200 vessels, and a fraction of their original strength. But they had won. Humanity would survive. Admiral, Captain Lara Dawnfire's voice came from the assault ship Dawns. Early light, we're detecting massive power failures across the remaining move facilities. The conversion systems are shutting down. Any signs of life from the facilities? Negative. The structures are going dark one by one. Whatever Dr. Stormwind did, it's cascading through their entire network. Voss closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 2 million deaths settling into her soul. Victory, but at a cost that would haunt humanity for generations. Every converted human across the galaxy was dying, as their biological modifications failed without the core consciousness to maintain them. Admiral, came a new voice, Captain Nix Voidwalker of the reconnaissance frigate Silent Hunter. I'm detecting something unusual on the planet's surface. The facility Captain Torvin struck. It's not completely destroyed. There's a secondary structure, heavily damaged but still transmitting. Hope flickered in Voss's chest. What kind of transmission? Data packets. Massive amounts of information being broadcast on emergency frequencies. It's like the facility is dumping its entire database before complete shutdown. The implications hit her immediately. If the core consciousness was transmitting its accumulated knowledge before dying, that information could include conversion process data, treatment protocols, maybe even reversal procedures for the partially converted. All ships with data intercept capability focus on those transmissions. Capture everything for the next 6 hours. Human ships position themselves around Veltharion, recording terabytes of alien data as the dying core consciousness emptied its digital soul into the void. The transmissions included star charts showing the locations of 47 conquered civilizations, tactical information about Velter technology, and most importantly, detailed records of every conversion process performed over the past century. Admiral Dr. Kai Shadowman, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, reported from the medical frigate Healing Touch. Preliminary analysis of the data suggests that recent conversions, those performed within the last 60 days, might be reversible. The process creates redundant neural pathways that can theoretically be restored. How many people are we talking about? Potentially thousands. The data includes identity records for every human converted during the final wave of attacks. If we move quickly, we might be able to save some of them. The rescue operation that followed became known as the Liberation of the Lost. Human ships spread across the Veltharion system, searching for conversion facilities that still contained living prisoners. They found them on the remaining moons, thousands of humans in various stages of transformation, their bodies fighting against alien modifications as the controlling signals faded. Captain Zara Nightblade of the medical cruiser Mercy's Edge led the rescue teams, her crews working frantically to stabilize victims before the conversion process could complete its lethal course. The success rate was heartbreakingly low, maybe 1 in 10 could be saved, but every life recovered was a victory against the darkness. 3 weeks later, the human fleet began its journey home, carrying with them the survivors of humanity's greatest battle and the data that would reshape their understanding of the galaxy. The Velter Empire was broken, its ships drifting dead in space, its conversion facilities silent and cold, but the victory came with a price that would echo through human history. The memorial wall in New Geneva listed the names of the 400,000 humans who died in the Battle of Veltharion, while the monument to the converted honored the 2 million transformed humans whose deaths made victory possible. Admiral Voss stood before the completed memorial 6 months after the battle, reading names that had become legend. Captain Mael Torvin, whose final sacrifice destroyed the core consciousness. Commander Yuki Starweaver, who died fighting for freedom aboard the Fallen Hope. Dr. Ellen the Stormwind, who provided the key to victory even as her humanity slipped away. Admiral, came a voice behind her. She turned to see a young woman in civilian clothes, her face scarred but her eyes bright with life. Dr. Stormwind, Voss breathed, recognizing the woman from her personnel files. The conversion process was only 60% complete when the core consciousness died. Elena explained. The medical teams were able to reverse most of the modifications. I'm one of the lucky ones. How many others? Nearly 3,000 so far, more every day as the medical protocols improve. It's not many, considering how many we lost, but she paused, looking up at the memorial wall. But it's hope. It's proof that even in the darkest circumstances, humanity can find a way to save its own. Voss nodded, feeling something she hadn't experienced since the battle. Genuine peace. The war was over, the conversion threat was eliminated, and humanity had learned that sometimes the greatest victories require the greatest sacrifices. Doctor, she said finally, what's next for you? Elena smiled, the expression transforming her scarred features. I'm heading to the outer colonies to help establish new settlements. The galaxy is a big place, and now that we know we're not alone, we have work to do. We have civilizations to contact, alliances to build, and a future to create. She paused, then added quietly, and we have a responsibility to remember. Everyone who died in that battle, human and alien alike, they died so that free will could survive in this galaxy. We can't let their sacrifice be meaningless. Admiral Voss watched as Dr. Stormwind walked away, her figure silhouetted against the memorial wall. The Battle of Veltharion was over, but humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. They had proven themselves worthy of survival, worthy of freedom, worthy of the stars themselves. And in the depths of space, where alien civilizations waited to be discovered, the name of humanity would be spoken with respect, fear, and admiration. They were the species that had faced extinction and chosen to fight back. They were the ones who had turned their greatest weakness, their stubborn refusal, to surrender, into their greatest strength. They were human, and that, in the end, was enough. Here lies the final testament of humanity's first galactic war. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched, but we were never outfought, and we were never, ever outdetermined. Inscription on the memorial wall, New Geneva, Earth, in memory of the 400,000 who died at Veltharion, in honor of the 2,000 who died as themselves.